Paper is the other area that is a major pain point for masking fluid. Many say it will often rip or tear when they peel off the masking fluid. So this is why we have to test masking fluid on a few different papers before committing to a more considered watercolour painting. I receive so many DMs and comments related to paper tearing than anything else. So we have to work out which papers and under what conditions could lead to tears or mar the surface of our paper when we start removing that dried masking fluid.
Paper surface greatly affects the performance of the mask. Student grade papers are usually made out of cellulose, which is wood pulp, rather than cotton. And cellulose is weaker and so it may tear more easily than cotton paper. Watercolour paper is traditionally sized with gelatin, so the paint doesn't soak in straight away. Lightly sized papers are great for drawing on and mixed media, but they're not going to be strong enough to handle masking fluid. And handmade papers are often too lightly sized and are probably going to tear when masking fluid is lifted off. Cold pressed surfaces will work quite well, however rough papers may be really tricky. It's because the texture of the bumps and crevices provides that extra surface for the masking fluid to grab onto, and so it might make it a lot more difficult to remove without harming the paper, and it will cause it to tear. Having said that, there are other factors such as the drying in between applications and even how you remove the masking fluid once it's dry can play a huge role in determining if the paper will tear, and I will cover this in later videos.
These are the papers that I'm going to be trying out just to show you. I don't know what papers you'll have, but ideally I do think you should try at least 2 or 3 watercolour papers for your test sheets, as it is better to have more choices and then you can choose a favourite. First off is this Winsor & Newton. It is 300 GSM or 140 grams. I believe it is 25% cotton and cold pressed, and if you look close up you'll see that it's quite a smooth surface, but there is a lot of indentations in it, so that is going to have some bearing on our tests. The next one is Archer's. It is again 300 GSM, 140 grams, and it is 100% cotton cold pressed. If we look carefully, there is texture. I actually find Archer's a little bit tricky to work with because it isn't overly smooth, but we're going to see how this affects our testing sheets. Next up is the Hahnemuhle Harmony, and it is hot press 300 GSM. I believe there is a little bit of cotton in there, and it does say that it is good for masking fluid. If I feel the paper, it is incredibly smooth, and we'll see if that has a bearing on the performance of our test sheets. And lastly, I'm going to try out masking fluid on this 100% cotton handmade watercolor paper. It's 150 GSM. I have had people asking me about handmade papers and they have difficulty with it. This is a close-up of it. It is relatively rough. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens when I apply some of the masking fluid with a brush or a dip pen. I do suggest for the test sheets and also for your projects to cut up your piece of paper into a smaller size. This is A5, which is 6 by 8 inches. This is what I'll be working with, and if you saw my sketchbook, you'll see that I was working quite small in it. There is a reason for that. It's because you can fill up the space much quicker and it won't be so overwhelming. And I know for some of you won't feel that you've wasted some of this paper, especially if it goes a bit pear-shaped. Just to let you know, I have mucked up a load preparing for this class, and I'm going to talk about this right at the end.